furniture is the second biggest source of landfill in Australia. 2,500 tonnes of furniture and household items go into landfill every year. The younger generation has a real opportunity, and the opportunities are being presented to integrate some social impact and some environmental impact into every role. The client is at the heart of everything. So being, in a sales role in banking or a trading role, it doesn't matter. The client is your most important asset, really, in terms of a banking relationship.
What's your definition of success?
It's such a broad question, but I think
private market investments are where investors can find real value. And it's important to know the what, why and how. And I've found over the years the best way to learn is to chat to people who've done it before. They've been through the bumpy roads and they've learnt the hard way, and through persistence, they continue to move forward. Hi, I'm Travis Miller, the host of Grow Your Wealth podcast, where entrepreneurs and business leaders share their story of the sometimes bumpy path to success. Join us as we deep dive into how people identified early investment or business opportunities. We'll talk about how they got started, where the idea came from, and who supported them along the way. Welcome to another episode of Grow Your Wealth podcast, where we explore the strategies and stories of financial success. I'm your host, Travis Miller, and today we're joined by a special guest, Ben Stammer. Ben forged a distinguished career over 26 years at Deutsche Bank, occupying high-level roles worldwide before co-founding the charity ReLove in 2019. In today's episode, Ben will share his insights into his journey in the finance world, along with the challenges, triumphs of, and the impactful work being done by ReLove. We'll explore the principles that have guided his career, the vision behind his ventures, and how he's leveraging his expertise to make a difference in both the financial sector and the community at large. So stay tuned as we unravel the story of a man who's not only grown wealth, but he's focused on enriching lives through his leadership, innovation, and philanthropy. Thanks for coming in, Ben.
Thanks, Travis.
Been a while, 15 or so years ago, we sat next to each other at Deutsche Bank.
That's right. Very close to each other, right? On the trading floor.
Pretty much. Okay, so let's sort of take a step back to the beginning. Can you give us a potted summary of who you are and what you're currently doing with ReLove?
Yeah, sure. So I started in banking. I worked for 26 years with Bankers Trust and Deutsche Bank, and had roles mainly in credit trading and credit risk management in Sydney, Singapore, London and New York. So I moved around with the bank.
Yep.
That then took me to leave Deutsche Bank. So around the time I turned 50, and I did some work for a few years with a group called First Australians Capital, and that was advising Indigenous businesses around accessing loan capital. It's often very, very tough for early stage businesses pre being ready for Big Four bank finance to access that capital.
Sure.
And then I was looking for something to do of my own, and me and my co-founder started ReLove about 3 years ago.
Gotcha. And what kicked that off? What was the...
Look, the impetus, we sort of talk about ourselves as being an accidental charity. We're not from the space. I'm a banker and my co-founder Ren's an architect.
Yeah.
At the time, we were doing some social good projects with a running group. So it was just a running group of 50 or 60 people.
Yep.
One of the projects that we were doing was working with a group called the Women's and Girls Emergency Centre, or WAGEC.
Yep.
WAGEC are supporting about 200 women a night in Sydney. So women and children in refuge and crisis accommodation.
Gotcha.
And one of their challenges is then, when the women are ready to leave into housing, that it's very, very difficult to furnish a house fully.
Sure. Yep.
And most women are leaving with very, very little. So Ren and I were, and this was through COVID time, we're seeing all this great quality furniture being thrown out on the sidewalk, and just looking at this and looking at, and why don't we do a project? So our initial aim was to try to rehome 5 women.
Yep.
We borrowed a little bit of warehouse space, and set about calling on corporates, calling on community to donate furniture. We ended up getting so much great quality furniture that we supported over 35 women in the first 6 months, and we thought there's something here. So now 3 years later, we've supported over 1,600 families, and this model is still growing.
That's awesome. A lot of families.
It's a lot of families. So right now we're doing about 20 per week, so around 5 a day.
And you're still on the tools, helping out?
Look, really trying to hire and to step back from that. At the start it was Ren and I with some friends in the warehouse hiring trucks, hiring vans.
Yeah.
We now have two trucks and a van ourselves. We've got a 2,000 square metre warehouse in Botany, which we call the ReLove Free Store, because part of the model is that we encourage our clients to come in and choose everything they want to set up. So they have an hour shopping appointment, walk around, and it's the dignity of choice in a time that they've probably had a lot of no's, and there's been a lot of trauma and a really tough time.
Gotcha. We'll go back. We'll look at ReLove a little bit later in the conversation. But just take a step. A lot of our listeners like to hear the backstory, where you come from. Obviously, you spent a lot of time in banking, but can you walk us through your education and then just your early career journey?
Yeah, sure. So education was all public school. So I went to Linfield East. I went to North Sydney Boys High School and then studied accounting and finance at UNSW.
Yep.
Went straight from UNSW into Price Waterhouse, where I worked in audit and became a qualified accountant, and pretty much left Price Waterhouse straight away. But to this day, I think every single day I still use those accounting skills. It's been a really solid foundation. I then spent about 6 months travelling and working in Asia. I had a stint working in Jakarta for Price Waterhouse. And then turned up in London with a view to get a temp job working at Bankers Trust at the time to save a bit of money to go travelling again. And that was the start of a 26-year career at Bankers Trust and Deutsche Bank.
How'd you get the first job? Just knock on the door?
Look, it was through a temp agency. So,
really?
temp jobs in London back then were popular.
Yep.
The hourly rate was good, for a young kid. The attraction of living in London and sort of saving a bit of money. But, it was the start of a very long career.
That's great. And I know your career took you through the GFC pre and post. So
that's right.
You would have learned a lot during that period as well.
Yep.
Now, a couple of people have influenced you. Can you come up with a top three?
Top three would definitely include my mum and dad, if I can include them as one. They really taught me the value of a study of hard work and resilience, but also compassion. And I just have to mention too my dad, who's Dr. Ben Stammer, who some people would know as an economist, who spent a long time at Deutsche Bank and Bain and Company. He also taught me the magic of compound interest, and my wedding was probably the first and only wedding in time where the magic of compound interest has been mentioned multiple times in the speeches at my wedding. Second person I'd say was a boss of mine, Fritz Thomas, who was at Deutsche Bank in New York, who I spent about 10 years working with. And Fritz taught me a lot of things, but one of the things that he taught me was that to think about breaking your career into three. The first third is spent learning, the middle third is spent earning, and working in banking at the time that was possible. And the last third was giving back. And I've pretty much followed that advice in terms of what I'm doing now.
That's great. Hey, if you're enjoying this, please subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It helps us build a community. We want to educate investors, and this is what it's all about. Very good. And so you've had lots of roles globally in financial services. Can you think of 2 to 3 pivotal moments? You've given us one. You knocked on the temp agency, got a job at Bankers Trust. What other moments were pivotal?
Yeah, look, I think the GFC was really pivotal. You mentioned it. So I was working in London in a credit role at the time, and then through the GFC actually moved back to Sydney. I think that was a really difficult time for a lot of people. None of us knew what was coming. We had real job insecurity for a lot of people through the time. Lots of us were sitting on significant mark-to-market losses, and then that leads into potential further job insecurity. But then I think the really important thing, and credit kind of led the way on this a little bit, was it presented so many opportunities. So, tier one securities trading at 25 cents in the dollar, Rio and BHP CDS at 1,000 over running.
Yeah.
So there were some really interesting opportunities, and I think those really significant market dislocations can teach us a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's a really important lesson for the younger generations, that there is life after some of those market dislocations.
I agree. Not sure if you remember, but during the GFC, I was up in Noosa and I got a phone call from Ben Stammer saying, I think you might have to call your client. Have you seen what's happening in the markets? And, it was an interesting time, but you're so spot on. The opportunities for investors post, if you had available capital, you weren't too leveraged going to the GFC. Obviously, the benefit of hindsight, but the opportunities to invest were pretty amazing.
Yep.
And, you just needed that cash at that time. If you look at our top tips for career, someone leveling up in their career, what are a couple of things you'd throw out there for the younger generation?
Yeah, so I think the younger generation has a real opportunity, and the opportunities are being presented to integrate some social impact and some environmental impact into every role. For us, probably starting in banking and working for many years in banking, it was always a really binary choice that you either worked in banking and you worked hard. Not saying people don't work hard now, but I think there are many more opportunities to look at social impact, to look at environmental impact, and think about that within standard career choices.
Yeah, I mean, you see with fund managers and banks these days, it's going into investment policies, it's going into part of strategies, dedicated strategies and part of general strategies. There's been a big change.
Yep.
What's your definition of success? How are you achieving and how can others?
It's such a broad question, but I think, for me, success is treating things with respect every single day. It is achieving, now obviously some social environmental impact. It's obviously growing wealth and it's, creating an environment where you can be comfortable and make some choices, creating those opportunities for your kids as well. So for me, success is a really, really broad thing now. And I think I've learnt that since leaving banking, that it's not all about the title and the position and the salary, but there are many, many more components of success for me.
Yeah, gotcha. Now back to ReLove. What was the why behind it? And you've touched on a number of these things, but is there an absolute why?
Look, the why is just a really simple model of linking all of this environmental waste. Furniture is the second biggest source of landfill in Australia. 2,500 tonnes of furniture and household items go into to landfill every year. Landfill is too easy, so corporate defits, hotels, suppliers with excess stock, and the community, we see people throwing so much out as part of council cleanups. Yeah. And then linking that, in a really simple model into lots of people who need furniture to restart. Yeah. And so setting up a home is a really fundamental part of restarting. For a woman that's been impacted by domestic violence, she has potentially restarted with very, very little. But if she's sleeping on the floor in social housing for a while, then there's a real risk of her potentially going back to a perpetrator, of questioning her choice of this new life. For people who are homeless, it's an ability to restart. So it's just the why is that it's just a simple model of linking great quality excess furniture to people who need it.
And how do you connect that up? So the source of the furniture, you've obviously mentioned you got 2 trucks. Are you you're approaching outbound to hotels? So presumably you build up quite a nice network, a bit like the food elements. That's sort of the food that's basically the supermarkets are providing. Yep. You're trying to do a similar concept in a way using furniture.
Yeah, totally. I mean, someone talked to us a few weeks ago and they said, so are you like the Oz Harvest of furniture? And we are. We're the new kids on the block. This has only been running 3 years. Oz Harvest has been going 20 years. But it's a very similar concept. So we're tapped into the property industry. So we've presented to the Property Industry Foundation, the Better Buildings Partnership, the Green Building Council. So we're approaching landlords, tenants, project managers, designers, lots and lots of sources of furniture. And obviously hotels are a huge part of what we're doing as well, because we really want the beds and the more sort of residential furniture.
Yeah. Sounds great. Now, what advice would you give to someone looking to make a similar transition from large business to a more philanthropic environment?
Look, I think there are lots of options here. You don't need to think about it necessarily in a binary way. You can think about board positions. You can think about using some of your skills from business, in an advisory capacity. You can think about doing some pro bono work. We have part of our volunteer family. We have probably 40 or 50 volunteers a week that help with ReLove, plus some corporate volunteers. And as part of that volunteer group, we have professionals who just devote a day a week to helping us, and that might be lifting on the truck. It might be organising the free store, or it might be doing some more sort of growth stuff with the charity. I think there's also just thinking about your own business and thinking of ways that you can contribute. So funds like the Third Link Growth Fund, which was started by Chris Cuff, the new Barrenjoey Community Capital Fund, they're giving, after expenses, they're giving fund management fees to charities and to support charities and social enterprises. So I think it's thinking about some still for-profit ideas that can really assist in this space. I think it's also thinking about social enterprises. So it doesn't have to be a full-blown charity, but it's thinking about business ideas where you can employ people, you can support people as part of your business model as well. Gotcha. So lots and lots of different options. It's not this binary thing of having to leave and work in a charity.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to learn more about alternative assets, there's a book here you can read, How You Grow Your Wealth with Alternative Assets. Now back to the episode. So you've obviously gone all in though, right? So your approach was, I'm not going to donate my time a couple of hours a week. I'm going all in. I'm going to jointly start a new venture. And I like the sort of analogy of the Oz harvest of furniture, which is a nice one. And so when I think about that, what made you think I want to go all in and not just be one of those people doing a couple of hours? And then, by the way, doing a couple of hours, donating your time, it's sort of you need lots of people involved, to sort of help out. But you've decided to throw your sort of everything at it, which is a different approach.
Yes, that's right. So, as we talked about earlier, this, really is an accidental charity. We never really set out to do this, but now we're doing it. We can't look away. It's a little bit like a startup. We're in that real growth phase. We've got good funding at the moment, but we've really got to shore up our funding going forward, and we're looking for partnerships. We're looking for support to help really shore up this business model. We've got elements of the social enterprise. I'm lucky. My wife is working full time at the moment, so she's the breadwinner. I've got a small private debt business on the side. But it is something that I'm really committed to, and Ren and I really want to grow this to the stage where we can hire a CEO and then step back a little bit.
That's brilliant. What's been the bumps in the road?
Look, I think one of our bumps has been that we expanded too quickly very early on in the piece. So we were running Sydney. We started something in Melbourne, which was a pilot program. We also were doing some work in Brisbane. And without having proper staffing around that, I think we've learnt that we really want to get the Sydney model right before we expand for, almost expansion's sake. Yep. But this is such an expandable model. Oz Harvest, I think, is a good example of a startup 20 years ago that really started in Sydney and did it well in Sydney, but now they're nationwide, so it definitely can be expanded. But bump in a road was definitely expanding too quickly.
Yeah, fair enough. And what do you need help on? Like, what if you were to pick 2 or 3 things that someone could assist ReLove business with or on? What do you think they are?
Look, the 2 things are probably funding and furniture.
Yeah.
So funding, we need partners, and that can be in the form of hosting corporate volunteering teams. It's a really direct day, but we do charge, as many charities do, for corporate volunteering because there's organisation, there's workplace health and safety. But the volunteers find that it's a really direct day of volunteering. So we're walking alongside our clients in the free store to help them pick everything. We're then delivering furniture into people's homes as well. no pressure to lift anything heavy. That we've got the staff, the trained staff to do that. But also looking at sort of funding, around sponsorship, around a name on a truck, around some co-branded partnership activities.
Yep.
And then furniture. We're doing 20 homes a week. So if you think about 20 homes, that's usually 30 to 40 beds a week. It's somewhere around 15 to 20 couches a week. Yeah. There's a lot of furniture going out, and so we constantly need to replenish that.
Gotcha. And you obviously need your warehouse and various things to store it to sort of cover the gap.
That's right. Funding is part of the warehouse equation as well, because warehouse space is not cheap. Industrial, as you'd well know, is still in this mini boom phase. Yeah. And we want to stay local to Botany Alexandria, because that's where many of our clients are and many of our volunteers, and also furniture donors.
Gotcha. Now, has there been any key learnings for you in the process? And you can take a step back to your banking career and even through ReLove. What's some key learnings?
Look, I think one big thing that I learnt in banking is that the client is at the heart of everything. So, being in a sales role in banking or a trading role, it doesn't matter. The client is your most important asset, really, in terms of a banking relationship. Applies to many businesses, obviously, but that is now the heart of what we do. We have a very different client base. So clients are, the people that we're supporting, but also the caseworkers from the charities that we work with. I think the second point is the value of partnerships. So we now work with over 45 charities across Sydney. We only work on a caseworker referred basis. Sure. It's important because when the client comes into our warehouse, we never ask a question. So there's no retelling of trauma, there's no forms, there's no qualifying. So it's a safe space that we really try to maintain around the client. And the last thing I think I've learned from my more recent years working in this space is that homelessness takes many forms. We often think about homelessness as people sleeping rough that we walk past on the way to the station, but that's a very small proportion of homelessness. Homelessness is couch surfing. Homelessness is insecure housing. We're working with more and more women over 50 who are technically defined as homeless. They've had insecure housing for a long time. We're working with youth at risk who the foster care system just hasn't worked, or they've been wards of the state and are technically homelessness as well. And so homelessness takes many forms, and often it's just a wrong turn or it's a fork in the road that can lead into this. And so we've learnt that it's our community. There's no us and them in this equation. It's all of us. I'm just trying to provide the option to restart and get back on track.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening. What's the capacity, you think? If you think you're currently servicing maybe 5% of what you could be doing, or have you got any numbers you think, like how much more could you be helping if you had, the extra resources to do so?
I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people around Australia who are defined as homeless, and that again is just a small proportion of people sleeping rough. We're supporting, or our goal in the next 12 months is to support 1,000 families. So we're only supporting a very, very small number of these. We are constrained by funds and furniture at the moment, but this is a very scalable model.
Gotcha. I mean, 1,000's brilliant, right? Like, 1,000 families you're making a difference for, which is brilliant. Now, this question is probably relatively easy because you've explained a lot of it, right? But what legacy, are you living and leaving? And this can be in your workplace and personal life.
Yeah, look, again, I think in the workplace, it's really about trying to find great client solutions that are mutually beneficial. Building wealth and working in that banking environment really has taught me a lot about, it doesn't have to be this sort of competitive win-lose thing. The solution should be mutual mutually beneficial.
Sure.
In the charity space, I think it's all for me really focused around social and environmental impact, and that's a very direct impact of what we're doing. But the last thing in terms of legacy really that I'd like to create is just an awareness for my kids that, many of us live in bubbles. Many of our kids go to great schools and they're in great jobs or on the way. But it's just creating, a little bit of an awareness that it's not always like that for us and for others.
I understand. It's brilliant. Thank you for giving us that run through. We're going to finish up just with some quick questions.
Sure.
What was your first job?
Paper run, North Shore Times, East Lindfield.
Were you any good at it?
I was rubbish. There was a deadline to finish it by 8 in the morning, and I could never get up in time to do it properly. So I was always getting the phone call from Mrs. Jones down on X Avenue saying my paper's not being delivered.
Yeah, well, at least you're having a go.
That's right.
What's a piece of advice for your younger self?
To listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a young banker travelling the world, I probably wasn't very good at listening, and I'm really trying to improve on that one.
Brilliant. What motivates you most as a person?
Social impact.
Easy one. What are your tips for driving long-term wealth?
I've got to, again, just harp back to my dad, Dr. Don. So it's the magic of compound interest and staying invested. We're all guilty of pulling money out at wrong times in the market, and I think just staying invested, still adjusting, but staying invested and then just letting that compound over time.
Yeah, there's someone else we both worked with called Andrew Bohm I had a chat with a few weeks back. The amount of times I hear about this compound interest thing, but it's absolutely spot on, right? Just be patient.
Yep.
Makes sense. And what's the biggest mistake you see people make when it comes to building wealth? And
well,
why?
Linked to the last answer, I think it's time out of the market that we all, well, certainly I've been guilty of this, and I know others, you feel like you want to hold cash at different points, and just historically we probably stay in cash way too long, and we're probably going into cash at the wrong time. So I think it's just staying invested. But the other point there, I think, is just linked to investments, and this probably comes to our background at Deutsche Bank, is focused on credit, private debt and other investments which can really diversify on what's typically an equity focused portfolio.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on that, but I might just dive into it a little bit because I know your background and mine's quite similar. So we talk about private credit. You've been quite active in that space on the side, effectively, where you're doing ReLove. And what have you been doing there?
Yeah, so I've been co-running a business called Venture Capital. Really started as a private debt business with 3 partners. We're just focusing initially on sort of private investments, and then we got some like-minded people to co-invest. We've been focused mainly on receivables financing. Yep. So it's tax R&D back financing. We've done a couple of legal disbursements deals in sort of fairly granular portfolios. Yep. And then more recently some solar financing, so for battery and solar. So into the residential market.
Gotcha.
So mainly receivables back, very, very granular, and it's something I see a really interesting diversifier in this market.
Yeah. One of my favourite forms of investing. It's ultimately you can wrap that as asset-backed investing effectively in the private credit space. And the benefit of that is something goes wrong, you've actually got something underneath that you can potentially use to claim back get your money back from your investing. Okay, when you're not working, and we've heard a lot about this already, I know you've been a kind of avid runner over the years and you've been an avid running coach. How do you spend your time?
Yeah, look, I mean, lots of ways, but Fridays is always a great time for us just after ReLove with our staff and volunteers at happy hour at One Drop Brewery in Botany, good little local microbrewery, so enjoying a wind down after a big week at ReLove with staff and volunteers, spending family time and running. Yeah,
gotcha. Very good. Really appreciate you coming on, Ben, and very inspired by what you're doing with ReLove, because you're clearly making a difference. If you can help 1,000 families, that's big, right? So well done on that front. If you're interested in connecting with Ben, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. If you'd like to find out more about ReLove, check out their website, relove.org.au. We will also include it in the show's notes. But thanks again, Ben, for coming on in.
Great. Thanks, Travis.
Hey, if you're enjoying this, please leave a review. It's really important to us. We're trying to build momentum around education, and better reviews will get more people coming and listening.